Welcome back to Made of Wires. A little late today. That's okay. Today we're decompiling. Pad of rubber bumpers. Or, we could go back to Symphony of the Night. Yesterday we spent some time working on Richter. We're going to do that today. I think we found right about where the orbs are during the Richter boss fight. So we're going to look at some of those functions. I only have about an hour. I'm going to set a timer for myself because I'm on a strict timeline. And then I gotta go. I hope everybody's doing great. Sorry for being tardy. But let's get into it. If you're not familiar with the Castlevania Symphony of the Night decompilation project, you can go to soten.z.dev to learn more. You can find a link to GitHub where you'll find the source code that we've decompiled so far. This is a matching decompilation project, which means all of the source code that we write and commit and that makes it into GitHub compiles to exactly one or more versions of the Symphony of the Night game. And so we've been working on the PlayStation version of Richter, but bringing along the PSP version of Richter because the PSP gives us some advantages during the decompilation process. And so we're going to continue on that, not focusing on the PSP, but we will use the PSP when it benefits us. I was looking at some other things. I don't know. I can't talk about a lot of them, but I will talk about some things. So one of the things that we haven't completely decompiled yet is the SDK, PlayStation SDK functions that get linked with any PlayStation program. So there's a couple layers when you're programming for the PlayStation that you need to be aware of. There's the BIOS, and those are a set of fixed functions that were read-only, not updatable on the machine. That BIOS changed and got bug fixes over time. And so the SDK, when people are writing programs, needs to be aware what the BIOS can and can't do and what functions are available there. And so let's look at some of the BIOS functions that we have. And they're going to be things that look familiar. Some of the libc stuff is actually in BIOS. And that's because the BIOS has a CD player on some versions of the system, a visualizer, memory card manager. And so people need to write programs, those programs. And so it's nice having a minimal libc there. Why do we only have two of those? Did those get taken out? It's possible that they got taken out. No, I didn't call them syscall, did I? I called them. I did these. This is one of the first things that I decompiled when I called them BIOS function. And let's see if we can find those. There we go. So a pretty minimal libc set. Mem set is in there, printf, string copy, malloc, all the things that you expect to see. Hey, Supreme Quetzal. Hey, Digit. Dizik, good to have you back. I hope your calculus classes are going good. I started late, so cheers to being early to my late stream. So anyway, we have these BIOS functions, and they're split into a couple tiers, and the tiers I think really are just based on what bits get set. And here's a few more of them. The A functions are kind of the lower level libc functions. The B functions are more PlayStation specific functions, and then there's a C tier as well. The only one that's referenced here, we only get the functions that are referenced and linked in. But those are some of those. And so some of those, the SDK just calls right into the BIOS, and that's what you do. In other cases, if there's, say, a bug that was introduced or found in one of the BIOS functions, later versions of the SDK might patch those out. And programs written later on and linked against the later version of the SDK may not even call those BIOS functions. Most of the time, there's no advantage to them being in BIOS, except that they're not on disk and it's some space saved, some memory saved. Supreme Quetzal has a test next Tuesday with physics. I had the worst physics teacher in college. Maybe he's not the worst teacher. He was bad for me. I'll say that. I did very well in physics in high school. And then I went to college, and my first Physics 1 professor that I had caused me to unlearn things that I had learned in physics. And I think 90-ish% of his class failed. And if 90% of your class fails your tests, I don't think it's the class that's having the issues. I'm pretty sure he was tenured, and so they couldn't get rid of him. But they could have had him do something other than teaching freshmen physics, I think. All right, so we're going to get... the reason I'm talking about this is if you were to write an emulator or write a library that was going to function like the PlayStation, you have to implement all of these functions as well, and some of them are pretty easy. Some of them might even be part of your system's library. So any of the libc functions, with the exception of like set jump, you're probably going to have those available to you already, and you don't have to write anything. You just pass it through to your system's libc. Easy peasy. Other ones, like the GTE functions, those are going to be more complicated and may have math in them that the documentation isn't really good at. So I was looking at, can we decompile some of those? We have a big set of those that are currently marked as ASM, but I don't think that they really are assembly. I think that let me back up. They are assembly, but I think that they can be written with macros that are provided by the SDK. And so I was looking at rotate average 3 and seeing, could I write that with the publicly available macros? What I discovered is the version of the SDK that I had is different, I think, than the one that Symphony of the Night is using. So I have to go back to like archive.org. You can find the SDKs there. See if I can find headers from the 3.5 SDK and if those macros match up a little better. But there's some macros that we haven't imported yet that I think are used there. Anyway, so that's what I was kind of working on. Supreme Quetzal has chill graders for his professors, which is, yeah, that's always nice to have. That I had a stats professor like that as well. It's always nice too when your professors, I don't know if people still do this or if it's now common practice. I had some professors who would give their old tests to the library, and then you could go to the library and look at all their old tests and see that year after year all they did was change numbers, which made it very easy to pass their tests. Okay, so why do I care about any of that? One of the things that I thought would be really neat to do, our PlayStation emulators are already very good. There's not a lot of complaints. They're not cycle accurate necessarily, but they're pretty good. One of the things that's kind of spun off from this project is PlayStation source compatible libraries for other systems, or like PC, for example. So if you have all the source code for a game, for example, can you just link that, compile and link it for another system if you have a PlayStation shim library? This is how the PSP implementation works. That's how likely the Xbox 360 implementation worked as well of Symphony of the Night. So if you're going to go down the path of writing a compatibility library for source compatible compilation on other systems or platforms, how do you know that your library works exactly like the original PlayStation hardware did? It'd be nice to have a test suite. So I started writing a framework for a test suite, and my goal for that is that the test suite will compile to a PlayStation disk that you could put in a regular PlayStation, and it would run the test suite, and the test suite should pass. There's some things that need to be optional because the SDK includes peripherals and other things like that, and if you don't have those plugged in, those tests obviously can't run and won't pass. There's also some things like they had a Dreamcast-like memory card with a screen on it. It's just not something that it's available. You can get them on the secondary market, but again, it's not something that most people have. But if you have all those, if you have a disk like that, plug it in, run it, and it should pass, obviously on real hardware. Making sure that all those tests pass on any revision of the hardware would be nice. The PS1, even PS2 and PS3 in backward compatibility mode would be nice. But then emulators could run it as well and see how they do. Do they behave the same way as real hardware would? But then all those tests are there as well. So if you're writing a compatibility library, you could link these tests as well and make sure that your stuff works just like the hardware works. So I'll get a little further and I'll try to demo that. But I think that'll be a valuable project at some point in the future. Let's get back to Richter. Let me make sure I'm on the right branch. I only have 47 minutes. I blabbed for 13 minutes. I was trying out Arch Linux. I need to so I do want that. The computer that I use to do this decompilation on isn't particularly new. I think it's a i7 8700, which is like 2017, so 8 years, not very new at all. Game, let's make. And so if there's other ways, it has a lot of RAM because RAM is cheap. It can go to a 9th gen i7, maybe even an i9, but it's not significantly faster than what's currently in there. And it's just like a Dell, lease return deal that I got for a couple $100. But I heard CatchyOS, I don't know how you pronounce it, is can be like 5 to 20% faster. So I installed that and didn't get everything set up. It's an Arch-based Linux. And I ch-rooted it into my Ubuntu installation. Not a huge fan of Ubuntu, but that's what I'm running. And ran a build, and it was like 4 seconds slower. Not what I expected. All right, so I want to find my entity update functions. I'm going to focus on these last 3 because these were the ones that are possibly orb related. Uh, 15,000 bytes. A little on the big side. Medium size. 4,000, that's a little on the small side. And 10,000 right in between. Let's do the small one and we'll work our way up. Hey, Dig Down Deep. Good to have you back. As always. All right, so this one's pretty simple. There's probably going to be ordering, field ordering issues. Like I already see that X and Y are backwards, but they're being assigned the same value. So usually that's just an inline assignment like that. Draw flags probably after. So we'll have to figure out what the correct ordering here is. I don't think there's really anything. I think the ordering really is the only thing that is tricky. Velocities are always fixed values, so I have a little script, hex to fix, which will try a bunch of different things and try to choose what I think would be the best representation. So here we're setting scale X and Y if these parameters are the same. Our Z priority looks like it's getting read much earlier. Our right to Z priority is... Let's see where the right is happening. I'm going to move that up. Interesting. The other thing I'm going to try is making this an else. The fact that there's, if it was one value, I would, oh, anim is always getting set to the same thing. So I'm guessing this is like this. Possibly inverted. Possibly happening earlier. These are never fun. So we have a second set of store halves. It is possible that these are happening twice. So C0 is the one that's out of order. Almost there. Where is this? Mask happening. The mask is happening way, way up here. Okay. So I think that these maybe are all happening much earlier. Or not, you know, whatever. All right, let's go grab the PSP version. I don't think it's very fun to dork around with these when the PSP will tell us exactly what's going on. So we need to find a unique value. This 825E looks pretty unique. And it is. It used to be that finding the PSP versions were harder, and again, it's kind of an experience thing. Like as you get more experienced with looking for and finding different things, everything gets easier. Animation frame is going to be an array. Don't need Z priority anymore. Let's look at M2C flags. Anim set Z priority. Palette. We'll do pal OVL. 73, and then our C's. Then params. Oh, and then we are setting this again. Weird. So this does get set again. So that was all that was missing. I think this order might have been wrong, but not quite perfect. We'll fix the rest of it in a second. Let's see how the PlayStation looks. Better. Not perfect though. It seems like this is an else, but it runs regardless. So we're not quite there. We may be setting a variable here. Let's try this. Feels like a decomp speedrun. I did speedruns about a year ago for fun. We were doing weapons and going through all those, and I would set a timer and try to get those done as quickly as possible. And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing that. All right, so there is some logic happening, and this was happening early on. Okay, so this check up for params is actually happening up here. So we need to create a sign 16. We'll call it params, and we'll do the mask up here. And that should show up, and it does. And so down here, we're not doing that inline anymore. And that was all that was necessary for the PSP. Was just moving that. Let's see if that works on the PlayStation. It should. Yep, that was it. I was wondering why that the mask was way up there. I was a little more confident with the weapon functions at the time because we were doing so many of them. that I pretty much knew what to expect with each of them. With bosses, not so much. I could see doing another set of speedruns with like functions below a certain size, like functions that are, I don't know, 700 bytes or smaller, something like that, when they're disassembled. What is this function doing? Do we care? It's not doing much. So this, in any of the cases for an entity update function, case 0 is going to be the step where an entity is initialized. And so we're doing some basic setup. You could think of the entity structure as effectively being zeroed out at this point. There's going to be a few things that are set either by the factory function that creates it, or by, we call it a blueprint, the thing that creates the room. There might be details in there about how to configure that. But case 0 typically is setting up, like, how do we draw the thing that we're going to draw? So it's something that's animated. It has a set of frames that are animated. It gets bigger and smaller. So there is a scale. It's about 50% bigger, depending on what the params are. So that means there are multiple instances of this that are drawn slightly differently. And then it has a Y velocity. So it's something that looks like is going up. So it might be like one of the item crash effects. I would have to look at, I don't recall what the orb looks like. I'd have to go back and either get the holy glasses or find a video. But something simple. There's no interaction. Basically, it just appears, gets drawn one way or another, and then travels up until its timer expires. What sets its timer? We don't know. Something else is responsible for setting its timer. Let's see if we can find the caller of this function. Could actually put what I'm searching for. So no caller. So this is going to be, it's created with a either a create entity function call or create ent factory from entity, or like I said, the blueprint. We'll have to come back to it and see if we can tell what it is. So that is not one of the functions we were looking for. Let's go back here. It might be an effect on the orb. This was the next smallest. Huh. Hint? I am Shaft. So Shaft was a character, I believe, in Rondo of Blood as well. Is that correct? Anybody from chat can confirm or deny? Pretty sure he was. Oh, this is an improvement. I don't think it was the case before that. If you search for, or if you know item IDs, you could search for holy glasses in the function. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's do that. Let's see. We should have, I'm going to look for holy and then do a separate search for glasses. There we go. I didn't know if it was one word or 2 words. Unfortunately, we don't have oh, is the second to last, is this the number? It does look like it's going in order. No, it's not. I think that this is... I think that these are ordered. Yeah, it looks like the second to last field is the item ID. Let's confirm that. I want to see what this is. Equipment. Yeah, this is equipment. Oh, it's the icon. Where is the weapon ID? It is... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7th field. So we want not a comma. 1, 2. Oh, not comma. I guess it's the 4th, 5th, 6th, and then this would be the 7th. So go back to holy glasses. Oh, that doesn't look like the weapon ID. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is this not in equipment? Oh, it's an accessory, that's what. Yeah, it's not in this list. I think these are indexed. The accessory ID is indexed. So let's see. Holy glasses is line 1172, and we start at 137. So 35, and then in hex, that is... That's going to be 23, right? Yeah. Not BO4, BO6. I might be off by 1. The 3 hardest things in computer programming are naming things and off by 1 errors. Depending on how this is used, though, it may get converted. We'll keep going through these other functions, and then we'll see. So we're back here. Shaft, possibly. Printing out I am shaft. So we probably will need a new entity extension for shaft, because there is this shaft is very different from boss shaft. My guess, I'm trying to recall shaft appearing. I think he's kind of floating around. Guessing that's what this math is for here. Doing a plus equals of 32. That looks like the angle that we're passing to the sine function. Create entity from current entity. We should be able to get the signature from that. Oh. So we're passing in a specific entity. Oh yeah. So we should be able to figure out where this is compared to the start of the entity table. Sometimes this happens where you get a fixed entity. This I don't think will be Richter. But it could be. So what I want to do is find where G entities starts, which is here. Get my calculator. Then I divide this by BC. That gives me C8. So entity 200 reserved for shaft, reserved for something from shaft. C8 doesn't have a lot of meaning to me, but that's what we're looking at here. You know what I didn't do, and I should have done this, and compile that other function, but that one worked out. So our entity ID here, 17. That is in normal people numbers, that's 23. Decimal, in decimal. We can look at VO6.h and see, do we have a 17, an entity ID 17? We don't yet have that. So we'll make one. And it's just nice. There's two reasons to put an enum here for this. The first is enums are, oh, sorry, I was over here. Adding an enum, I do need to set its value. Enums are nicer to read than magic numbers. But on the PSP, these are global variables. Yes, Dizek says another way to find Holy Glass might be to look for the player equipped item. that is true. And we probably even have that field mapped. I think it's a G player field. And so we can look at the G player symbols that have been extracted and see where that is. That check might not be in an entity. It might be somewhere else. This was a subtraction. This is a timer. And this go to block 10. I get rid of that already. It's just going to be the decrement of that timer. Bar V0 here is, so this is setting the timer. Oh, interesting. This logic is getting done as well. So it's not just decrementing, but doing this. Block 11 is doing that as well. So that belongs down here. So I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a timer. I was trying to teach my youngest son about state machines. Because what child doesn't need to know about state machines, am I right? He's in a Lego robotics club. And we were trying to get the robot to as it had two motors for the back wheels, but spin the wheels in opposite direction to do a quick turn, basically on the point between the two motors. And he's using a scratch-like interface to do that. And you can't turn both motors at the same time. So I was showing him eventing and a bunch of other things like that. And drawing a state machine to keep track of all the different states. And I don't think he cared too much about that. All right, so we have this decrement, but it's not working quite the same way. It's possible that this is signed. This next one definitely is. All right, so yeah, just the types were wrong. So since we weren't accessing the array consistently, let's do this one as well. The optimizer wasn't grouping those together. And these, oh, yeah. Assigned is correct there, 160. Yeah, basically this should be jumping to this same location, and it's not yet. We'll try to figure that out in a second. Let me just get the rest of these. So this is another ordering issue. Oh, I'm wondering why this isn't updating, because I have a compiler error. So this is part of G entities as well, and we have to do the same thing. We have to figure out what entity is it affecting, and then what offset in that entity. When we don't have an address mapped, we don't know necessarily what larger structure it's part of. SPIM allows you to pass in symbols, and that's the symbol file that I edit when we find new symbols and want to give them names, and then it will use those names when it's doing the disassembly, which is nice. And it will allow you to put a magic comment behind that entry that has a size, which allows you to SPIM will then find all symbols within that size and give you an offset from that symbol, instead of generating just a random variable, an automatic variable with the address. And so if you don't do any of those two things, you get this automatic variable. What SPIM doesn't allow is kind of naming individual symbols within the scope of a larger collection. So we can't say, like, everything that's in the G entities table, if we've not otherwise given it a symbol, give it an offset from G entities. And so you can't nest things like that in SPIM at the moment, which is a bummer. Not hierarchical, but we can figure this out. So I'm going to take this address. Of course, I always close the symbol table too early. So we get this 9310 number, and that's how many entities plus the offset. So I'm going to divide that by BC. So that's within the C8. This is integer division, so we'll truncate any remainder. So it's within that same C8 entity. So then I go through and do C8 times BC plus the G entities starting point, which gives me the starting point of the C8 entity, which we had earlier and I deleted. And I could have found this function call line and grabbed it from there, but we recalculated the same thing, and that's fine. So now I take this value and subtract where this other entity started, and I get offset 30. Sorry, wrong screen. You were watching the calculator. I know it. And then I go back to entities, and it's params. So we can go grab this C8 entity and set its params to 3. All right, so here we have a plus equals 64. Dizik says, last time I spoke about the spim offset thing, it didn't work. Yeah, true. Sometimes it does work. I don't know when to know whether things will work or not. We do have a clamp macro that probably would work in this situation. I'm always unsure whether I should use a macro for something or not when the code is clear enough. I do like terse code, but I'm not a fan of like obfuscatedly terse code. Clamp would probably work here as well. Oh, we're getting close. 94. M2C loves to put integer type markers all over the place. Rarely are those necessary. All right, what do we have? So for some reason, this is not getting optimized down to here. I'm not sure if it's the array access or something else, but what I'd expect and what was happening before, we had a go-to that was doing this. Let me make sure that these are the same. Nope, that's why. How about that? Yeah, there we go. I had the type wrong. So when we have these blocks of code that are identical, and they probably were identical, because that's easier than a go-to, those get optimized into the same thing. So I think we're pretty close. One more thing here on 19. The ordering of these seems wrong. And that looks like that's right. I don't necessarily know that these are absolutely correct yet. And I think I'm going to go grab the PSP version just to verify. Because I'd rather have this work on both right away if it's this close. I know I don't, I say that I don't care about the PSP version, and I really don't. But it's easy to get to, and might as well. So this 8250 is the value I'm going to look for. Unfortunately, all these palettes are unique. I haven't seen sound effects really yet in here. Sound effects is the other thing I go to usually. Hey, Cristiano. How many entities are in G entity? I think 256. I can confirm in just a second. More people need to decompile PSP stuff. We only have Patapon and Symphony of the Night as presets here. A little surprising. I would love to do the Valkyria Chronicles games. Those are some of my favorites. One of the things we're going to see, and this kind of going back to the entity ID thing, this line here is going to be wrong, 25 for certain, because it's going to be grabbing a global value. And that's because that is how entity IDs are done on the PSP. So we want an extern variable, and then we're going to define EID17 to be that variable. We have some macros to make this easier as well. And we should have PSP defined. Yeah. Why did that not work? It didn't recompile for some reason. So there's something slightly wrong here. Oh, we're pulling the entity out into a variable. And that makes sense. Then we can use the pointer here. $38. Still need to go back and create an entity extension for this. I don't have time to do that on the stream today. But trust me when I say that that is what will be necessary. See all these little things that the optimizer glosses over. Ooh. What happened there? Two. $72. So yeah, just a little type thing here. Opacity is a unsigned byte. So writing this as -3 instead of FD. Would that generate the same machine code? I would think so. I'm not sure why it disassembles to the same thing or to something different. Okay, a few more things and then we're done. This is the ordering. I think that was it. 16. Flags is different. I think that's a version difference. We'll confirm. I always assume that the PSP is the other, and like the one that you're specifically saying. If it's this, and everybody else gets the default, which ends up being the US version of the game. Sorry, treating the US version of the game as default. And no difference on the PlayStation, which is what is expected. Right. This is D90. So I think this is Shaft. I don't have this file open anymore. Why do I think it's Shaft? Because of the I am Shaft. And that one works as well. Oh, and I'm at time. Perfect. Swoosh. So we're decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I'll have to go back and fix this version thing, create an entity extension here. But we have another one done. My guess is the bigger of these three is going to be the orb. So we'll do that on Monday, because yeah, it's Thursday. So see y'all. Thank you, Dizik. Thank you, Supreme Quetzal, Cristiano, Dig Down Deep. Appreciate it all. How many entities RNG entity? Oh yeah, sorry, Cristiano, I did not get to your question. I'm gonna answer that right now. Come on. If I could spell. Yeah, 256 entities. So entities are anything on the screen that is going to change or move or interact in some way. An entity can have many polygons associated with it. And so if you're a player character, for example, most of the time you just have one polygon, and that's the face that your sprite is drawn on. But the max life up, like entrance animation, for example, I think that has 384 sprites associated with it. So an entity is just the thing that has the logic usually. And there can be 256 of those in any room at a time. And that's a hard limit because there's other memory right there in the game. And there's often code that checks to make sure if you want to create polygons or other things like that that are superfluous, just bail out early and don't draw them. Anyway, that's it. See you all on Monday. Adios. Oh yeah, the ending spiel. I always want to make sure I'm one of 30 plus people who have contributed to this project. I'm just one person, just a contributor, didn't start the project, not my project. I chose about a year ago to start streaming online because I thought it would be fun to share this process with more people and learn from other people coming on as well, and have done that quite a bit. Never want to infer or imply that this is my project, just a happy contributor. Really enjoy working with the people that have put a great thing together. So if you want to know more, go to certain.z.dev and learn more. Adios.